person is a monster. It's a subhuman. This person doesn't think like you and I do. This person is not going to make sense.
Welcome to JonBenèt Ramsey's Sketchy Details Part 23. If you have not watched the first 22 parts, it's highly advised that you do so you can keep up with what we're talking about. And for the few who are actually going to go back and watch them, just be advised that the beginning ones are extremely low quality. This video, as well as every video in this series, are intended for an educational purpose only and are not intended for children at all. So number 89 is going to be a addition to number 87 of the last video because I forgot to explain exactly why I link Dawn with Fleet on the day of her funeral. So on the night of the 23rd, they had that Christmas party, the other Christmas party where there was that mysterious 911 call. Well, that night and then that morning, the next morning, which would be Christmas Eve morning, Dawn Pa, so Patsy's dad, decides to take a standby flight. Now, at first, I didn't know what the hell a standby flight was. But basically, like in layman's terms, it's you go to the airport and you wait in hopes that somebody who's taking a flight to the same place you're going to is for some reason going to cancel their flight that they had already booked and that somebody else isn't going to get it before you. It's really ridiculous, right? Well, to think to do this on a holiday is even more ridiculous because during the holiday season, every airline overbooks the flights by 10% on top of what they already overbook flights. So it's kind of really ridiculous, and it seems like he really wanted to get out of there. I think him deciding to go on the standby flight and the 911 call and Fleet White getting mad are all related. That's why I said that in number 87. So number 90 is one that I have been holding on to for kind of a while now. I'm kind of being lazy right now, so I'll just post it up in the text on the screen. But in one of my earlier videos, I'm talking about that guy that stole the autopsy photos and then sold them to the Globe magazine, and how the Globe magazine then published a couple of them, right? Well, I'm going to play this little clip for you of a video, and then we'll go back and we'll talk about what he's talking about in the clip.
A little decency would be good.
Globe spokesperson Tony Frost says that is not the case.
We took very careful consideration before publishing these photographs. We had a large selection to choose from, and we chose what we feel are the less sensational ones.
Okay, so the reason why I left the little glitchy part in the beginning of the other guy saying a little decency would be nice is because it emphasizes what the Globe reporter, no, he's not the reporter, he's the representative for the Globe, said. He says that, you know, they had a large selection to choose from. They took very careful consideration when selecting the photos, and they specifically chose ones that were the less sensational. Now, do you remember how sensational those photographs that they picked were for a lot of people? A lot of people couldn't handle those photos. Imagine the photos that they didn't publish. That's what I'm saying, people. If they wouldn't have published those photos, we would not have them. So there's way more that show way worse. So I stand firmly behind that there were more physical signs on her body of what happened, and they are hiding that from us. So number 91 is going to be about somebody who we really have not talked a lot about at all, and that's going to be the photographer Judith Phillips. Now, I came across an interview with Judith Phillips, and she says something that this was the first time I had heard about it, and it instantly made me think of something that I was already aware of existed in Texas, or at least used to exist in Texas. Before we get into the whole Texas thing, though, there's a couple other things about this interview that I want to point out. One was, she says, John had a very devious aspect to him. I think that's very true. She also firmly believes that at some point Patsy began to suspect that John was sexually abusing JonBenèt, and Judith believes that Patsy killed JonBenèt because of John's sexual abuse against her. So Judith actually knew them from Atlanta before any of them moved to Boulder. And Judith says that when she knew the Ramseys in Atlanta, they were more of an affectionate couple, and they enjoyed each other more so. And Judith moved to Boulder a year and a half before the Ramseys did. Patsy would come and visit. Well, Judith says that once Patsy actually moved to Boulder, she saw a big, big change in Patsy's demeanor and her personality. Judith states that Patsy was allowing the newfound wealth to change her and to form her into a person who was more consumed with how her house looked and the furniture and dressing up in immaculate brand name clothes, right? Well, Judith says that she firmly believes that it was the money that was changing Patsy, because it seemed that the more and more wealthier they got, the more and more kind of stuck up and materialistic Patsy got. Judith speaks of witnessing Patsy starting to play games with people, like one-upper games and I'm better than you games, constantly one-upping people's stories, as well as constantly boasting about some new big purchase that she had made. Judith also talks about how after Patsy first beat ovarian cancer, that Patsy didn't really appreciate her second chance at life. By looking deeper within herself to see what life was truly about and see that appearance and social status were indeed only surface qualities that don't really matter in the grand scheme of things. And how Patsy only became super religious after she beat cancer. Now she would outwardly bring up God and speak about God a lot, when as before she only attended church and never really brought God up in any conversation. Her whole religious fanatic thing came after she beat ovarian cancer the first time. Judith also reveals that Nedra is who quasi-informed Judith about JonBenèt's beauty pageants by showing Judith the pink cowboy sweetheart outfit. Judith speaks about how she had never seen JonBenèt dance, walk, or dress like that while they were at home and stuff like that. She says that it almost felt like a second life that Patsy was keeping from her while she was alive, because Judith didn't see any of these pictures or video until after JonBenèt had died. So she felt like it was this whole second life that Patsy was trying to hide from certain people. She speaks about how at the photo shoot where Nedra and Patsy and Burke and JonBenèt are all wearing white, that when she was photographing JonBenèt, she actually had a hard time because JonBenèt didn't know how to loosen up and be natural. She was so poised and posed, if you will. She said that was kind of very telling to her, because it was like JonBenèt didn't know how to not be quote-unquote on. You know what I mean? And she said that she was trying to capture like a deeper side of JonBenèt, and I think that's kind of trippy, because if you look at those pictures, JonBenèt looks like she's at her wit's end. She looks fed up, she looks drained, exhausted, and she looks like she's hopeless. I personally find these photos to be the most haunting of JonBenèt. So in the summer of 1995, the Ramseys, for some reason, went to spend that summer in Texas, which I say some reason because isn't it like 1,000 degrees during the summertime? And that when they came back, that Judith noticed changes in both Patsy and JonBenèt. She states that Patsy she had worry lines, and she looked way more aged for it just being a few months that she had seen her last. And that the other change was that Patsy was sporting a brand new, ginormous diamond ring. Now, she doesn't specify if it's on her ring finger, but I assume that it does, because she states that Patsy's excuse for getting it was seeing all the other Texas's wives' giant wedding rings, and then she wanted one too. As far as JonBenèt, she said the first thing she noticed was JonBenèt's bleach blonde hair, which Patsy denied bleaching it, but it was clearly bleached. And then she says that she noticed that JonBenèt's chubby cheeks, her little baby fat in her face, was missing, and that she looked exhausted. She looked like that a certain childish joy was kind of missing from her. She just said she can't pinpoint it, but there was something different, something like saddened about JonBenèt. Now, I had known about the bleach blonde hair, but I did not know that they spent a summer in Texas, nor of these other changes that Judith noticed. Now, I don't know how I'm going to go about saying this, but okay, so after first reading that, I instantly thought about something in Texas, or something that used to be in Texas, that was called, I don't know what it was called, but it was some sort of circus-themed studio where CP was filmed and produced, and it was associated with another place in Texas that was called Uncle Sam's snuff factory or snuff farm, one of them. It's because, they go hand in hand, these two activities. I instantly thought that JonBenèt that their whole Texas trip was because JonBenèt went to that circus-themed studio. Mr. Pickles' Circus, that's right. It was called Mr. Pickles' Circus. Last thing I want to bring up is about Patsy. So I had heard from elsewhere about this once before, but for the life of me, I cannot remember where I heard it from. But after hearing Judith talk about it, it made me start to believe that it has some sort of credibility. Anyway, so there's talk that on Christmas night of 1996, that after the Ramseys returned home from the Whites' Christmas party, that Patsy went to another Christmas party by herself where she met up with this man that she was having an affair with. This man was also a resident of Boulder, who was an investor of some sort. He was married with children, and his children went to the same school as JonBenèt. And Linda Hoffman also further supports this by stating that Patsy began to get all dolled up early in the day, leaving without saying where she was going, just expecting Linda to babysit all day, and then she'd come home super giddy and super happy. So now this guy has a lot on the line to lose if he ever came forward about this little affair. Thus why he has never told police about being with Patsy on Christmas night of 1996. Now, whatever, I get it, sort of. You don't want your precious public image and your not-so-precious family, because you cheated, to be ruined, thus most likely ruining your career. But I am so sick of all these people around this case that choose to self-preserve instead of do right by JonBenèt. Seriously, I am so tired of people who have pertinent information about this case staying silent and denying JonBenèt justice just to save face or stay in good graces with someone else. Like, can this poor child ever have anyone around her do what's best for her and not they damn selves? I mean, what's the worst that could come out of this guy coming forward? Well, worst for who? For him, that'd be his infidelity being exposed. So shame, embarrassment, and probably a divorce. For Patsy, not to be rude, but who cares? She's dead, so nothing could really affect her. For the case, well, I'm not really sure, besides show the true level of corruption that crawled all the way up the judicial ladder of Colorado. And this is huge, mainly for two reasons. The first one being some of the most powerful people who came to be involved in the case, either by choice or being pulled into it by somebody else, are 100% aware of the fact that JonBenèt was being subjected to CP. And the second one being the bigger scope shows the high level of the game of politics that were played in the case to convince certain officials to not charge the Ramseys and certain higher up authorities to block certain lower officials from moving forward with the truth. Which makes me want to talk about this for a quick second. There is something that everyone needs to acknowledge and accept about this case, and that is that 75%, if not more, of the reasons why the Ramseys were never charged is because it would then start this snowball of horror and true moral panic in Boulder and elsewhere, forever destroying Boulder's delusions of safety, purity, prosperity, justice, and being the all-American dream town. There is no one reason for why JonBenèt is and forever will be denied justice. If you are such a shallow person that you have to have it whittled down to one thing that you can then pinpoint and aim all your hate towards, then that one thing is CP. Bottom line. But for those of us who need to see every individual held accountable for whatever part they played in her murder and injustice, here are some of the reasons why adults who know exactly what happened to her choose to betray her even in death. This poor child is portrayed to the fullest. And these reasons are all under the assumption that our justice system is fair and just, and that they did this all in the beginning of the investigation. The tightly sealed lid to the CP production of American children, as well as the participation of American adults in CP, would be blown the fuck off, exposing the mainstream media worshipping Americans to something that their beloved talking heads have endlessly denied, in turn causing real 100% expected moral panic and outrage, pretty much causing total chaos. We would see people like Alex Hunter, Jay Ilowski, and the Steins, and so many more people would have or should have been arrested, meaning for Boulder at the time that they would have seen troves of their city officials, representatives, and local politicians getting arrested for horrible, horrible things like conspiracy, aiding and abetting, possession of CP, distribution of CP, tampering with evidence, falsifying evidence, bribery, among much, much more. thereby completely destroying any and all trust and belief in their government officials and representatives. It would have killed Boulder's little well-crafted hypno-dream of perfection. Not only those types of people, but they would also begin to see other certain members of their society being arrested, like friends, neighbors, teachers, professors, dance instructors, photographers, doctors, and religious figureheads, with mostly being charged with charges related to CP, further traumatizing the Boulder residents, shattering friendships, business ventures, educational ventures, and more. This, if it would have been done right, would have absolutely destroyed Boulder and what Boulder thinks it stands for. So lots of people whom they were close with, who they wouldn't have never suspected otherwise, would all be put underneath the spotlight for their dirty, sinister little secret. Her murder is so much bigger than simply a child murder case from some small town in Colorado. This has huge, far-reaching, multi-state implications. It affects all the states they lived in or frequented, Michigan, Georgia, Virginia, etc., due to the extremely high probability that her CP was also exchanged in or out of these states and possibly even produced in that state, and that individuals in high places in those states would also be arrested for CP-related charges. Another reason why it will never be solved is because our military, I'm thinking mostly Navy, but the Army too, are directly involved with the production and transportation of CP, as well as the FBI being involved in the covering up of the CP, which is probably the biggest reason why this case will never ever be solved. The Navy, the Army, and the FBI are extremely powerful and, let's say, influential organizations. Now, not every individual working for or enlisted in the Army, Navy, or FBI are involved or even know about it. In fact, odds are it is only a very small percentage from each organization that knows and participates in the CP. Little disclaimer real quick. Any organization I may bring up, like the FBI or even the Freemasons, and I say, oh, blah, blah, the FBI knows or the Freemasons do it, does not mean and should not be taken to mean that every individual involved in said organization is guilty. So please do not take it that way. With all that being said, I remember someone or a couple of Boulder residents talking about exactly how many people moved out of Boulder right after her murder. I wonder who all those people are. Anyway, I think this is where I'm going to stop this one. I do so hope that you enjoyed it. Please like, subscribe, and share. I am trying to reach 1,000 subscribers, and thank you so much to my recent subscribers and my existing ones. I really do appreciate all the feedback and the comments, and it's just nice to know that people are taking to this. So, as always, God bless. Evil on this scale is impossible to comprehend. To know who murdered JonBenèt Ramsey would be to know what world we live in, where we are.